What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name's Michelle. Today is September 25th of 2023. I apologize for being 10 minutes late. I have two huge initiatives that I want to share with you that was just announced by the White House. And, of course, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer followed right behind President Biden when she announced, of course, that she has her own climate core initiative that she's bringing to the state. So if you've been here any length of time, then you know that I like to look at the macro, the master plan, if you will, rather, um, because for the last 11 years, since 2012, I've been watching the UN, the World Economic Forum. I've been looking at these big plans, but I did not look at the implementation of these plans until this year. And wow, I was shocked then, I'm still shocked every time I see just how this plan is being implemented in my state and in your state, no matter where you are in America and even in the West, Germany, Europe. We're all the plan is the same for everywhere, but different things are being implemented at different times based on the location, right? And what's going on with those people and that culture. So, looking into these initiatives, it's important to understand the big picture of why all these things are happening, okay? Because if you look at them individually, I don't think they make sense. Like, you would be confused at what's going on in the world if you didn't know this master plan, which of course is the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and the United Nations Agenda 21. And I'm going to show you exactly how Biden's new climate core initiative is linked with those and how it affects Michiganders specifically, but you yourself, and no matter what state that you are in, can look and see that this is a global plan that's locally implemented. And so watch me do it and you can do it too for your state. I highly encourage that you start muckraking and start spreading the news to the people around you because things are happening so quickly. It seems to us now because we kind of woke up late, I think, but they've been planning this for a long time. And so I'm going to jump in and show you what is going on with the Biden Harris administration launching this climate initiative. Good morning, Dragonfly, and anybody else that is watching. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and hopefully I can show you exactly how everything is connected because it's really important to understand. So, jumping in, oh, another thing I like is I like to go straight to the source if possible because if you go to another article, they might not read the language correctly. They use jargon in all of these press releases, and so it's good to just go straight to the source for ourselves. So that's what we're going to do. Out of the White House, as part of the Biden-Harris administration's historic climate agenda, yesterday the administration launched the American Climate Corps, a workforce training and service initiative that will ensure more young people have access to the skills-based training necessary for good-paying careers and the clean energy and climate resilience economy. The American Climate Corps will mobilize a new, diverse generation of more than 20,000 Americans, putting them to work conserving and restoring our lands and waters, bolstering community resilience, deploying clean energy, implementing energy efficient technologies, and advancing environmental justice. All while creating pathways to high quality, good paying, clean energy, and climate resilience jobs in the public and private sector. Of course, that's what they say, good paying jobs. That's the only thing that they can really say that's a positive, and that is even a lie. I mean, really. But this initiative being bolstered, or rather, this initiative targeting the youth, is extremely important to understand. And what's going on here in Michigan with the wind and solar, and then basically the central government is trying to bypass the local government, the townships and such, because the townships are pushing back and don't want wind turbines or solar panels in their rural areas. And so the youth, this is going to directly respond to that pushback that's coming from the local areas. So it's all connected. This is the couple comments I wanted to share from the leaders. I highlighted a few that are important. I do not know how to say this individual's name, and I apologize for that. Probably should have looked it up, but we'll just say Prakesh, executive director of the Sunrise Movement, which I've never heard of until reading this. So I'd like to look into this and see what it's all about. But 3 years ago, it would be nice if I did this. So you can see exactly that this is from the White House. I'm sorry. I should have showed you earlier. Okay. So this individual, 3 years ago, I sat on then Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders' Unity Climate Task Force and shared one of Sunrise Movement's top priorities for the future administration, a civilian climate corps, a visionary jobs program to put thousands of young people to work in rear career pathways fighting for their future. Now, I'm going to cue you in here. There is a lot of maybe military-esque jargon, or rather words, that are in here. Boots on the ground, front lines, fighting. Like, there's a reason for this. Again, war is different now, okay? Now, after years of demonstrating and fighting for a climate core, we turned a generational rallying cry into a real jobs program that will put a new generation to work, stopping the climate crisis. Young people everywhere should feel empowered by this victory and continue demanding the change we need. This past summer, we saw record climate disasters, record labor strikes demanding good, meaningful work, and major climate protests led by young people. The American Core is a response that begins to meet the movement and show young people how their government can work for them. We're often asked how President Biden can win the support and enthusiasm of young people. He's gotten our attention. Keep going. And hopefully you could start to see, just how our youth in this country is going to be utilized. I have a couple articles too to share. It's just crazy what's going on. Manish Bapna, President and CEO of Natural Resources Defense Council. In every great challenge this country has faced, it has turned to the essential strength of its people, united around a common goal. This combines national service with workforce training to rally a new generation around the need to confront the existential challenge of our time. You see how they are. They're telling a story, right? If you look at Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell, it talks about the hero's journey. And this is how our brain is kind of hardwired. And so the government, alongside the World Economic Forum, United Nations, is giving a story to these children, to the youth of the world, but more specifically of our nation and the Western nations. Because we need to be re-educated over here in the West. We're too freedom-minded, unlike the East. But this existential challenge of our time is a lie. That is the problem here, okay? Is that the actual threat that they are presenting to our children, to our youth, and brainwashing them to fear this threat. It doesn't even exist. And all it does is give more power to central government. And it's so dangerous what's going on. It's so important. That's why the truth is so important. I'm going to continue on. This will build a versatile core of workers with the skills to help conserve and restore waters and lands, make our communities more resilient, speed the shift to clean energy, and advance environmental justice. Once again, what is environmental justice? I've talked about it before, but it's so convoluted. To me, it sounds like justice for the environment, which for these people, humans, destroy the environment. We are a disease on this earth. Once again, it's very anti-life. So that would mean that the justice for the environment would be for us to be in smart cities, where 30% by 2030 is all wilderness because human beings are not good stewards. Which, again, I don't agree with that narrative whatsoever. I think we need a new story, a story where humans are noble and we can be good stewards of this land and clean it up for everybody. And so I don't like this narrative that's being pushed, and our children have been re-educated into this, and I'm going to prove it to you. I have After this, I have an article to share. Colin O'Mara, President and CEO of the National Wildlife Federation. The American Climate Corps is an innovative way to put young people to work restoring natural resources, bolstering resilience, and revitalizing communities. These young people are going to go local. They're going to be involved with the township boards, I bet, with this energy push. This all has to do with the wind, solar, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really a climate initiative. I don't know why it's called the Inflation Reduction Act when it's going to inflate the money supply. It's the ultimate win-win, this individual says from the Wildlife Federation. President Biden's executive action is the first step toward creating a truly modern conservation corps that can address the challenges we face and inspire the next generation of conservation leaders. Trevor Dolan from the Industry and Workforce Policy Lead, Evergreen Action. I mean, there's just so many committees, guys. It's unreal. Young people growing up amid the climate crisis have an acute understanding of what we're up against. Why is that? And now they have an opportunity to fight it head on. The same voters that delivered the election for President Biden in 2020 overwhelmingly favored the creation of a climate corps. And today the president answered their call. The same voters. Are those voters actually, higher than just we the people? I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. Young people growing up amid the climate crisis have an acute understanding. Yes. That, I don't know. This was repeated several times in that. Okay, so Ben Jealous, executive director of the Sierra Club. That's another one that's implementing agenda. They're all implementing this agenda. We need all hands on deck approach to address the climate crisis, and the Biden-Harris administration establishing an American climate corps with specific opportunities for youth to work in climate resilient careers is a historic effort to meet the moment. The Climate Corps will mobilize young people, workers, and federal resources in a way never seen before. The Sierra Club celebrates the Biden-Harris administration for scaling up clean energy, increasing well-paid union jobs, and fostering environmental stewardship, exactly the path we must take to protect the people and the planet. Right, increasing well-paid union jobs? I don't think the union would agree. Margie, alt director from Climate Action Campaign, establishing the American Climate Corps is an important step that will help create national purpose and better position the United States to meet the 50 to 52% reduction in climate pollution that President Biden committed to and scientists say is essential. After delivering historic climate and clean energy investments in the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, it makes great sense that we would recruit the workers we need to build our 100% clean economy. The president's climate and clean energy plan is investing in today's electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and builders. The Climate Corps will make sure we have the best trained and highly skilled workforce we need for years to come. They're being trained. They're being trained in sustainable development. They're being trained in this idea that we are at war with ourselves to protect the climate. And they're talking about electricians, plumbers, carpenters. These are all individuals that have sustainable development in their education. I mean, think about it though. If the building code, which has been updated so that it phases out gas appliances and promotes electric appliances, electricians will need to know that. Plumbers, carpenter, builders need to know these changes in the building code. And since they come from the master plan, like, again, we need to know this master plan. So there's a few more. Come down here. Young people are on the front lines of the climate movement. Once again, there's that military jargon. Since first being elected to Congress, I have proudly championed legislation creating a new 21st century civilian climate corps. This is Colorado Congressman. The new 21st century civilian climate corps. The 21st century plan right here. Agenda 21. The agenda of the 21st century. That's what that reminds me of when he's saying this. This is the 21st century. Like, I have proudly championed legislation creating a new 21st century civilian climate corps. Once again, he said it. So Locally led conservation delivery system. Locally led. Opportunities to get boots on the ground with conservation districts provide the next generation meaningful development opportunities and leadership roles within local communities. Boom. They boots on the ground in local communities. What do you think that means? This is incredibly invasive and everybody needs to know about it. This is going to be how they force wind and solar on people that don't want it in their not in anybody's backyard. Nobody's backyard do we want it. They're forcing it on us using the children, using the youth. I'm going to skip to this right here. United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development was from 2005 to 2014 and can be defined as an international resolution adopted by the United Nations to promote sustainable development and education worldwide. United Nations DESD tries to integrate the principles, values, and practices of sustainable development into all aspects of education and learning in order to address the social, economic, cultural, and environmental problems faced in the 21st century. DESD is based on the general principle and values of sustainable development. Biodiversity and nature conservation are linked with human diversity, inclusivity, and participation, as well as economic prosperity. The concept of DESD is context-based and value-laden, as it is based on the global agreement in the beginning of a new century to promote learning for sustainability at all levels of education around the world. They did this already. This is 2005 to 2014. These youths now are going out into the world, and I'll show you this really quick as it's important. Montana youth climate ruling could set precedent for future climate legislation. It did. This is a group of youths from the age to 5 to 22 went to court against the state of Montana, and it marked the first time a U.S. court has ruled that young people have a fundamental right to a climate system that is safe and stable for their lives. They are going out and using the education that they were given to promote United Nations Agenda 21-2030. And that is the only way all of this makes sense, because we are going to be in trouble energy-wise, big trouble, because we're not going to be energy efficient or self-sufficient rather. And so it's all going to be blamed on the youth. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a lot going on here with this youth and what it's similar to in the future, which I'm sure you saw the thumbnail, so you know what I'm talking about. We're going to go to the other initiative really quick because it is absolutely connected, although you wouldn't think it at first. President Joe Biden to establish first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention to be overseen by Vice President Kamala Harris. Tomorrow, President Biden will announce the establishment of the first ever White House of Gun Violence Prevention to reduce gun violence, which has ravaged communities across the country, and implement and expand upon key executive legislation action that has been taken to save lives. By the way, a quick stat for you, 25,000 people a year. That's how much gun violence kills. The new Office of Gun Violence Prevention will be overseen by VP Harris, who has been a key leader in the Biden-Harris administration effort to end our nation's gun violence epidemic. Stephanie Feldman, a longtime policy advisor to Biden on gun violence prevention, will serve as director of Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Don't know that person. Alongside leading gun violence prevention advocates Greg Jackson and Rob Wilcox. Statement from the president. Every time I've met with families impacted by gun violence as they mourn their loved ones, and I've met with so many throughout this country, they all have the same message for their elected officials. Do something. It's why last year I signed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act to keep guns out of dangerous hands, and have taken more executive action than any president in history to keep communities safe. But as I've said before, while these are important steps, they are just a few steps we need. towards what is needed. Do you think that we're safe, that our cities are safe right now? Do you feel like, I mean, even Grand Rapids, which was always really safe for a city, is not so safe anymore. I mean, theft is on the rise, everything is on the rise crime-wise. So, I don't understand how making it harder for law-abiding citizens to get guns would ever stop violence. Again, law-abiding citizens, they're the only ones that are gonna listen to this. Dragonfly says, "I know our township is corrupt. Our treasurer was hired back even after he was found guilty of sexual harassment. Was supposed to go to classes, never did. Now he's back and wants to run for supervisor." Wow. Well, you know what you gotta do? You gotta get that person out of there, and first step is awareness and let everybody know around you that can actually do something about it, which again is why I advocate for grassroots movements and start local. Get your squad together and in order. Get it ready to go, and know your neighbor. Try to help your neighbor. Going back to this, just a little bit more on this. I'll continue to urge Congress to take common sense actions that the majority of Americans support, like enacting universal background checks and banning assault weapons and high capacity magazines. Define assault weapons, define high capacity magazine. But in the absence of that sorely needed action, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, along with the rest of my administration, will continue to do everything it can to combat the epidemic of gun violence that is tearing our families, our communities, and our country apart. We know true freedom is not possible if people are not safe. You see how that sentence doesn't make sense? True freedom is not possible if people are not safe? No, safety and putting laws into place in order to ensure safety is what tramples and demolishes freedom. So that sentence is contradictory. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention builds on historic action taken by President Biden to end gun violence in our country, including signing the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I have not delved into that. If you have, what is your general sense of it? Is it a good thing, or are there some worrisome things in there? I'm sure there are, but I have to look into it myself to let you know. The Biden-Harris administration has announced dozens of executive actions to keep especially dangerous weapons and repeat shooters off our streets, hold rogue gun dealers and gun traffickers accountable, provide law enforcement with the tools and resources they need to reduce gun violence. What does that mean? What tools do they need and resources do they need? And lastly, here's what the key things that are happening out of this: banning assault weapons and high capacity magazines, requiring safe storage of firearms, requiring background checks on all gun sales, eliminating gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. That is extremely important, and it will change the nature of buying and selling guns, obviously. And enacting his Safer America plan, which would put more police officers on our streets for accountable community policing and invest in gun violence prevention and intervention. So the same people that were saying defund the police, defund the police, defund the police are now going to put money into the police force? Now, I'm going to just be honest with you. Um, I'm sure that there are individuals out there that are police officers that are good people. But overall, the general institution of policing has been corrupted, especially since the people that didn't want to take an experiment got fired. And then they had so many openings that they had to lower their standards. And so people in certain states with crimes, felonies or misdemeanors are now police officers. Do you think that there might be bullies? They might be just looking for a position of power that they can bully people, and maybe that's why we see so many violations of our rights from police officers. I mean, this is all just a big ball of crap that's rolling downhill and getting larger and larger, right? But the bottom line is now you're going to invest in the police, who is mostly a government, you know, fist, a mob um, security task force. And it's unfortunate. And again, I'm not saying that every police officer is like that. I'm saying overall, unfortunately, our policing is not in a good state. at all. It's not good. Now we're going to go over here. Michigan is doing their own climate core, of course, because several reasons. Whitmer is one of 3 governors that sold us out to Davos, the World Economic Forum, this year. Georgia and Illinois are the other 2. So she's right behind Biden here and in launching this. And it's important for Michiganders to know, but this is all coming to a theater near you. So buckle up and understand how it's implemented and how perhaps you can try to stop it. Because we have to try. They win if we just are apathetic and say it's too late. It's over. We can't do anything. They win. So we have to try. Governor Gretchen Whitmer joins the Michigan Community Service Commission and the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy in announcing the federal funds to support the Michigan Climate Corps AmeriCorps program. The Michigan Climate Corps is a part of Michigan's strategy to address climate change, protect the environment for future generations, and build the next generation of climate leaders in Michigan. This funding will support the state's implementation of the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, a roadmap to make Michigan carbon neutral by 2050. Today, we are coming together to launch the Michigan Climate Corps, bringing hardworking AmeriCorps members to our state to help carry out the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan and address climate change head on, said Governor Whitmer. These talented young people will help us build a Michigan where every Michigander has clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and access to healthy, affordable, local food. Protecting our precious natural resources required us to roll up our sleeves and do the work. And by connecting a successful national service initiatives to climate change and conservation efforts, we can ensure future generations get to enjoy our beautiful public lands and majestic Great Lakes. She says this while she's bringing in so many industries that have chemicals. These industries like the EV battery plants, semiconductor plants, and now a potash mining, and I'm about to tell you about silver mining that's going to take place in the UP. So at the same time that she's saying she wants clean air, the air in Kalamazoo is awful because of different industries that she has greenlighted. Again, it doesn't really make sense unless you know that she's a liar and that she's actually implementing the plan locally. And then it makes sense. The Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, unveiled in April of 2022 and coordinated through EGLE's Office of Climate and Energy, is the state's roadmap to achieve carbon neutrality while averting the worst impacts of climate change, creating good-paying jobs, and building a more prosperous, healthy, equitable, and sustainable future for all Michiganders. OCE's Catalyst Communities Initiative, launched in 2020, is tasked with providing education, planning, and tools to help government prepare for the impacts of climate change. So right there, it tells you this whole new Office of Climate and Energy, was created in 2020, and they just keep creating bigger and bigger government with all these different offices. Now the VP is in charge of an office for gun crime prevention, which again is going to trample all over our Second Amendment rights. That's the bottom line for that, in the name of saving us. But really, they just want to disarm us. Let's just be real about it, because if we're disarmed, it's easier to implement all these things with or without our compliance, our approval. Vital climate action is a team sport, said Clark, EGLE director. Just as hundreds of dedicated people work together to create climate plan by Michiganders for Michigan, the Michigan Climate Corps will deliver a surge of energized and involved AmeriCorps members to help fulfill the plan's promise at local levels. Once again, this is a task force. This is an infiltration team into the local townships to either help us come to the right decision on wind and solar, or to just bypass us altogether. All in the name of saving the planet against us. Once again, I have to bring forth the fact that carbon is not a pollutant. It's not pollution, okay? And there are now 1,750 scientists and professionals that prepared this urgent message, have signed this declaration that climate science should be less political while climate policy should be more specific There is no climate emergency. That's the declaration. There is no climate emergency. The Geological Archive reveals that Earth's climate has varied as long as the planet has existed, with natural cold and warm phases. The Little Ice Age ended as recently as 1850, therefore, it should be no surprise, it is no surprise, that we are now experiencing a period of warming. Warming is far slower than predicted. The world has warmed significantly less than predicted by IPCC on the basis of modeled anthropogenic forcing. The gap between the real world and the modeled world tells us that we are far from understanding climate change. The reason why the models say what they say is garbage in, garbage out. They want some kind of emergency so that they can justify all these actions. And so they put in the data that would pop out the answers, the results that they want. That's why you can't trust that crap. Climate models have many shortcomings and are not remotely plausible as global policy tools. They blow up the effect of greenhouse gases such as CO2. In addition, they ignore the fact that enriching the atmosphere with CO2 is beneficial. That is why I will say over and over, this is an anti-life movement. You are the carbon that they want to reduce. I am the carbon they want to reduce. Carbon is not bad. You cannot prove it. It is not a pollutant. It is a greenhouse gas. More carbon, more green. When they make these machines that are like vacuums that are in Texas that are sucking out the CO2 from the atmosphere, you are stealing the trees' food. You know, what they eat, what they breathe. They breathe in our CO2. We have a good relationship. It's intelligently designed. And so sucking all that out, you're going to kill trees. You're going to kill the green. The more CO2, the higher the CO2 goes, the higher the trees can go. The bigger the trees can get. The more green the world can be, the more CO2 there is. It's a fact. So when they're twisting it and trying to make us feel like we're a problem, and we need to know at the base level, no, we're not a problem. There are some people that are a problem because they're doing all this crap that they're doing. And again, they're going to make energy so expensive or inaccessible. And that is going to put people into more poverty, not less. Global warming has not increased natural disasters. Here, CO2 is plant food, the basis of all life on Earth. Exactly. CO2 is not a pollutant. It is essential to all life on Earth, period. I was taught that in school, too. It's like when they started saying that CO2 bad, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Photosynthesis is a blessing. It's a blessing. It's intelligently designed. The more people, the more CO2, the more trees possible, as long as we're good stewards. More CO2 is beneficial for nature, greening the earth. Additional CO2 in the air has promoted growth in global plant biomass. It is good for agriculture, increasing the yields of crops worldwide. Imagine that. So more people means more food to eat. Holy crap. Global warming has not increased natural disasters. There's no statistical evidence that global warming is intensifying hurricanes, floods, droughts, and such like natural disasters, or making them more frequent. However, there is ample evidence that CO2 mitigation measures are as damaging as they are costly. And again, if everybody had shelter and, innovations, energy, cheap energy, then the deaths from climate are mitigated, right? If people have cheap energy, they can warm themselves and they don't die from the cold. Blizzards won't kill anybody anymore if everybody had cheap energy. Climate policy must respect scientific and economic realities. There is no climate emergency, therefore there is no cause for panic and alarm. Now, the United Nations has brainwashed your children, our youth, to think that there is a cause for panic and alarm. And so to them, it's completely justified to sit in the middle of a street and stop every car from going by and going to their destination. And having all these cars just sit idle doesn't make any sense towards their goal, but their drastic measures make sense if you understand that for the last 20 years, they've been brainwashed to believe that they're all going to die if they don't stop this. And so it's awful. It's this whole ideology, this whole thing that's happened to America, the world, our youth. It's absolutely awful. and unfortunately, it has German roots. The it has never really gone away. Those ideas from World War II, eugenics, and all that has never really gone away. It's still here today. Just look at Planned Parenthood. But we need to have empathy for the youth, but know that they are implementing this agenda, and they think they're in the right. They have been told that this is the right thing to do, and I don't know how we help them to see besides just telling the truth as much as possible. We strongly oppose the harmful and unrealistic net zero CO2 policy proposed for 2050. If better approaches emerge, and they certainly will, we have ample time to reflect and readapt. The aim of global policy should be prosperity for all by providing reliable and affordable energy at all times. All of these initiatives are making energy so much more expensive. And it's all to redistribution to help the emerging markets. But it doesn't have to be that way. The only reason it's that way is because these people think that these resources are finite and they have to be spread out evenly. When really, there's plenty of resources. They're not finite. You can't prove that oil is finite. We've never run out, and we've never even been close. Every time one oil well goes out, we either create a new way to get the oil or a new pool of oil is found. It's In a prosperous society, men and women are well educated, birth rates are low, and people care about their environment. Right. Birth rates are low because if all your children are going to survive, then having two that are absolutely going to survive, and everybody just having two. But again, never am I for a government saying you can only have two children, which that has been kicked around in these talks where you can only have a certain amount of children. Now, we all know it happened in China and it was devastating because government shouldn't play God, but that's what they're doing. That's what they want to do. They want to replace God. They want to be on the top of the hierarchy. And that's why we need God. Whether or not you go to church and are religious and think of it that way, just to have something outside of our hierarchy to aspire to, a compass, so to speak, where is north? We have to have some kind of compass outside of humanity. That's how I think of it logically. I have never read the Bible, but I'm starting to. Exodus, Jordan Peterson on YouTube. Please watch it. It's amazing. It's really good stuff. Anyway, we're going to go back to the United Nations, and this is from UN.org. Youth. Who are the youth? There is no universally agreed international definition of the youth age group. For statistical purposes, however, United Nations, without prejudice to any other definition made by member states, defines youth as those persons between 15 and 24 years of age. So, history of the UN, come down here. In 2015, the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2250, which encouraged states to consider setting up mechanisms that would enable young people to participate meaningfully as peace builders, to prevent violence and generate peace around the world. As the first Security Council resolution wholly dedicated to the vital and positive role of young people in promoting international peace and security, this resolution clearly positions youth as important partners in global efforts in promoting peace and counter extremism. They're going to use the youth to go after extremists. Now, their definition of extremist and mine are very different, obviously, because I'm sure, unfortunately, I'm considered extreme by just telling the truth that CO2 is not a pollutant. But the fact that the Security Council has this resolution for peace builders, they're using the youth as peace builders. A central principle of the 2030 Agenda is the assurance that no one will be left behind. It's funny because you hear this from all kinds of people. The United Nations just had meetings on the 18th and 19th. They said it. Xi Jinping out of China has said it in his meeting that he had for the Global Development Initiative that he started for his people. No one will be left behind. And that is the constant message that they are saying. You can run, but you can't hide. That's what they're saying. No one will be left behind from these sustainable development goals, guys. They're meant for all nations, all peoples of all ages, and all societies. The universal nature of 2030 agenda entails that youth should be considered across all goals and targets. Youth are specifically mentioned in 4 areas: youth employment, which is what this initiative that Biden is putting in place. This is what it is catering to. It is catering to the United Nations. And yes, I have Joe Biden went to the United Nations and spoke, and I do have to talk about that. But this 2015 agenda was Obama's time, and Obama was the one that got us back into the United Nations, or really said, "This is what we're going to promise" in 2015. Now I know Trump got us out of the United Nations, but now we're back in, so we're in it. Obviously, Biden's in it. Youth are specifically mentioned in 4 areas: youth employment, adolescent girls, which that is something to consider. Adolescent girls. Education and sports for peace. Moreover, young people are recognized as agents of change, entrusted with fulfilling their own potential and ensuring a world fit for future generations. Youth and the SDG 4, quality education. They just come right out and say it. Education is a fundamental right for youth everywhere. Sustainable Development Goal 4 calls for inclusive and equitable quality education and the promotion of lifelong learning opportunities for all. For all. To achieve this, there is need for concerted efforts to ensure that young women and men have access to free, equitable, quality education, as well as targeted training opportunities. To achieve this, yes, everybody, and that's why they keep talking about, third world countries, is because and digitizing them and making sure they have access to the internet. You cannot educate them, you cannot train them, you cannot brainwash them, re-educate them, however you want to say it, if they don't have the internet to get the message that the United Nations wants them to get. This is part of that everywhere. It will be everywhere. Ensuring access to inclusive and equitable quality education is essential for successful transition into labor force and attaining decent work, and is the key to achievement of many sustainable development goals. So they say outright, these sustainable development goals will not be achieved without the help of the youth, period. That is why Biden has created this opportunity for 20,000 young people to be trained and paid for by the government. This is a government initiative going after our youth to train them for a specific plan that the United Nations has come up with. And it's all there in your face. It's not a conspiracy. I'm showing you that this is what they're saying. It's all out there if you just look at it. Sustainable Development Goal contextualizes the call for decent work for young people. The issue of unemployment, underemployment, and poor job quality have proven to be persistent and daunting. Youth are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than adults, with a global youth unemployment rate at 13% in 2017. Our education has completely failed these people. They don't really have the reading, writing, and arithmetic down. I mean, you look at our education system and where the kids are at a 7th grade, they're reading at a 3rd grade level, 4th grade level. It's awful. But, and that's why employment is down, but what they're doing is the government is coming up with ways to employ them. And this is all so USSA to me. This is all Russian and social democratic ideas from Germany. That, like an amalgamation of the two, like a combination of the worst freaking ideas that we could possibly have, and we're putting it into our youth. Young people may be called the torchbearers of the 2030 agenda, since they have a pivotal role to play, not just as beneficiaries of action and policies under the agenda, but rather as partners and participants in the implementation. Indeed, young people have been architects in the development of the 2030 agenda and remain engaged in the frameworks and processes that support its implementation, follow-up, and review. But of course, it's because of the decade of United Nations education. So these people are patient, and they've been doing this for a very long time. The adaptation of the 2030 agenda represented the culmination of extensive 3-year process involving member states, civil society, including youth organizations, and the development of specific goals and targets. Youth well-being, participation, and empowerment are key drivers of sustainable development peace around the world. Young people have been at the forefront of activities and initiatives aimed at furthering the 2030 agenda and meeting the goals. So again, they're saying it outright. They've been at the forefront of the initiatives. We've been targeting the youth. We have been training the youth to implement our agenda. Does that concern you? It sure as hell concerns me. I mean, look at, they're just pointing. They're all pointing. But I'm sorry. It reminds me of a little something something, okay? And I'm not the only one here. We're going to switch over really quick, and this is, it's fascists using children as a front. Former Greenpeace activist compares student climate strikes to Hitler Youth. A former Greenpeace activist has sensationally compared student climate change strikes to the Hitler Youth. This was all the way back in 2019. He saw it back then. Again, he helped form Greenpeace, and then he left when the United Nations took it over and started doing evil with it. And now he goes around and talks about, he cares about the environment as we do. We care. We live here. We want to breathe clean air. But that is not what this initiative is really about. And he is onto it, and he has been talking about it. And so I'm thankful for this individual. Dr. Patrick Moore served for 9 years as president of Greenpeace in Canada and 7 years as director of Greenpeace International. Talking to 2GB Radio's Alan Jones on Thursday morning, Dr. Moore said students are being used by activists who are behind the global climate strikes. And you just saw that Montana case was this year. So between 2019 and now, I'm sure there's so many more things that the youth has been driving and implementing all these regulations, and it's perfect. It's like they have trained our youth to demand their own enslavement. They have trained our youth to demand big government. It's sad. It's beyond sad. It's, whether it's the Hitler Youth or whatever, it is really mainly fascists and communists that use children in this way as a front. They should be condemned outright by everyone in the world. The Hitler Youth organization was set up by Hitler in 1933 to indoctrinate young boys with Nazi ideals, including racial purity. But now we see that they're indoctrinating young people, but they have a especially keen eye on adolescent girls this time. Why is that? Dr. Moore said children are blindly following a climate agenda and aren't being taught logic or scientific methods. They're not. They're just being taught, you're going to die if you don't do something. And so they're going to try to do something. And it's our fault as a society because of a plethora of things. But for one, that we don't have two-parent households. That's what's best for the children. And so we've left our children behind as a society. He also believes children are being used as an ends to justify the means by abusing young minds as they aren't mature enough to be making serious decisions. The former activist said he was particularly concerned about one of the global faces of the climate change strikes, 16-year-old Swedish Greta Thunberg, who has Asperger's. Right. And I've said that from the beginning. I try not to make fun of her or anything because this is an individual that has been used since she was a child. I feel sorry for her. She had 2 actor parents who brainwashed her to be this climate activist. And again, she probably really thinks that the world is going to end if she doesn't do something. She's a child in Sweden being used mercilessly by her parents and by society to bring about those school strikes for climate change, Dr. Moore said. I've seen her giving her statements. It's absolutely clear that other people are writing the words that she is saying. And she has a mild form of autism, so this is child abuse in the worst way. I agree with him. Let me know what you think. I mean, do you think it's hyperbolic, or can you see the resemblance between the two? Do you know anything about the Hitler Youth? And if not, I think we should all do a little bit of diving into that because history rhymes, if not repeats, and this sure rhymes to me. The UN Program of Youth of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, which serves as the focal point of youth in the United Nations, builds awareness of the global situation of young people, promotes their rights and aspirations, and helps increase their participation in decision-making as a means of achieving peace and development. DESA coordinates the participation of youth delegates in the General Assembly and ECOSOC system, where governments regularly include young people in their official delegations. The Secretary General appointed his envoy of youth in January 2013 and a special envoy on youth unemployment in September of 2016. So the forum represents the most institutionalized venue for youth participation in UN deliberations and is an important vehicle to mobilize support among young people for implementing the Agenda 2030 agenda. That's the ECOSOC Youth Forum. Youth Swap focuses on joint action by the UN system on the issues of employment and entrepreneurship, political inclusion, civic engagement, and protection of rights education, including sexuality education and health. Now, I don't know if you've heard about the recent UN agenda, not goals, but guidelines, and it was very concerning about people under the age of 18 and sexual education. I'm not going to get into that, but these people are also in charge of this push towards uh, sexualization of young people that's going on. You know, MAPS, which is minor attracted persons, they have their own flag. It's all connected. Even though you wouldn't think it, it absolutely is because of Agenda 21. Now we're going over here to Capcom. Biden bypasses Congress to create the Climate Corps. Whitmer announces Michigan version. No experience, no problem. Starting in early 2024, the Michigan Healthy Climate Corps will field a cohort of 30 AmeriCorps members who will provide critical support to communities tackling climate change. The Michigan Climate Corps website reads, Michigan Healthy Climate Corps members will receive significant training and career development support to step into Michigan's climate leadership pool. The White House announcement says the Climate Corps will fund good-paying jobs at $15 per hour. Whitmer uses the same cadence, good-paying jobs, to describe state-subsidized jobs in Michigan. Now, I'm pretty sure you can go to McDonald's right now and get a job for $15 an hour. Obviously, I think forestry or whatever, walking around in the forest, if that was a job for $15 an hour, would be cool. Way better than working at McDonald's. But I, of course, think that this whole initiative is extremely sus and worrisome. This is youth workforce development, Frost said, and will help us in many different issues, from gun violence to the economy. That right there tells you exactly how the gun violence is connected to this. Not exactly. It doesn't tell you exactly. It tells you that it is. We're going to see more and more as this stuff rolls out how these two initiatives absolutely coincide. One can't happen without the other for whatever reason. Now, whether or not that's these youths are going to go door to door, I don't know. I don't know what these youths are going to be doing exactly. Now, the 30 that are here in Michigan, I would bet are going to go to the townships that they want to put solar and wind in, and they're going to try to influence that somehow. That's the first thing I think that these 30 individuals will be doing here in Michigan. But I'm going to keep my eye on it because this is almost like a task force, like a force, like not a law enforcement type of thing, but a climate enforcement. So if you think about it along those lines, they've just created a new kind of military, but now they don't have guns, these climate people. So that's something to be said. It's just, we have to see how this is going to roll out, because this is a New Deal style initiative, which, if you know anything about the New Deal, it was the biggest blow up, making government bigger than anything else that's ever been done, right? Government is completely different after the first New Deal. So now they're touting this as the New Deal for Biden's cabinet. Rather than hire workers directly, the Climate Corps will subsidize the training and work experience of 20,000 people. Media reports describe it as a New Deal-style initiative, a callback to the days of civilian conservation corps under President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Critics argue, as they did at the time of FDR, that this is an expense America cannot afford. Critics also argue it's a jobs program for the politically connected. Absolutely. Who do you think is going to get these youth jobs? You know, probably Whitmer's kids or someone like that, right? It's going to be people that are politically connected kids. This is pure socialist wish fulfillment, said Mitch McConnell, which Mitch McConnell's had 2 strokes, I think, on TV so far. I don't think they're claiming that they were strokes. I'm not sure, but I just will never forget the article. It said Mitch didn't glitch. And talking about how he just stared at the camera for several minutes when he was in the middle of a sentence. So Mitch McConnell needs to be retired is what I'm trying to say. But that doesn't change the fact that what he said right there is kind of true. It is a socialist wish fulfillment. I mean, this is very socialist for the government, us taxpayers, to be doing this, to be spending this money on these jobs. The first hires will be made for a forestry program, and they will receive a compensation package equivalent to $15 an hour, includes lodging, transportation, clothing, a living allowance, health benefits, and more. Wow. The White House announcement says there is a racial justice element at play too. The American Climate Corps will focus on equity and environmental justice, prioritizing communities traditionally left behind, including energy communities that powered our nation for generations, leveraging the talents of all members of our society and prioritizing projects that help meet the administration's Justice 40 goal, the White House announcement said. Well, there you have it. Prioritizing communities traditionally left behind. What's ironic about this is that I think he's talking about like communities around here in Michigan that were for the auto worker industry. But we are the people that are saying we don't want your crap here, and yet you're forcing it down our throats in the name of helping us. Like, we need to help these traditionally left behind communities, you know, these underserved communities, these poor counties or what have you. And yet we're the ones that say we don't want this stuff. Well, we're going to convince you that you do. That's what's going down. We're going to convince you. So come over here. I have a few minutes on here that I wanted to share with you. This is from the Youth Perspectives and Call to Action, the World Economic Forum, and it's just a few minutes, but this comes directly out of one of these youth's mouth. So these 3 individuals, actually these 4, because this person that you see on the screen right here, she went through the United Nations youth programs. She is a alumni, and so she was charged with asking the future alumni questions. And so I think that what this individual has to say, this youth, is very telling and concerning. And it should be for you as well.
You work at the intersection of climate, as you said, technology, public policy, and some of your work involves open source data for governments. So when you think about youth using their voices, how can they affect public policy and urban transformation?
So
how can they affect public policy, and urban transformation? Well, we know this is all about the 15-minute city, the urban transfer, or 20-minute neighborhood.
Look, we talk a lot about how science should influence policy, but we talk very little about how that said policy should be implemented. And implementation is obviously all that matters. And this generation, our generation, we've taken the streets of cities to push for climate action. But what we are really saying is listen to the scientists. So there's not...
Listen to government establishment scientists, because I just showed you that 1,700 scientists, and 2 of them are Nobel laureate, prize winners. These are very intelligent human beings in the scientific community, and they say there is no climate emergency. And so this individual is talking about science from the establishment side, consensus science, which is a contradictory term as well, because there is no consensus in science. There shouldn't be. That's not how real science works. But this individual probably really believes that the science is on her side, and that these youths are 100% not only justified, but they're in the right. to go into the streets and protest for climate change, to go into the court system and tell the state of Montana, you're not doing enough for United Nations Agenda 2030 goals.
The mayor in the world who doesn't know that this is the call for action. Now,
there is not a mayor in the world that doesn't know this is the call for action. Not a mayor in the world. And she's right. The mayors know what's up.
Luckily, there are also lots of cities that take these science-based targets. And so the work that I'm part of is to move that chain from science to policy to implementation. And as you're saying, to make sure that there's a data-driven approach in this digital platform that we provide, where it's not only the sort of front-end decisions that are made with data, but you actually publish this so that citizens can take part. And when citizens can take part of the same data that drives decisions, you're empowered. And as young urban leaders, as global shapers, we need to be aware of where to find that information. We need to know what has been implemented and not. And when we know, we can hold leaders accountable.
Yeah, so it's not just hearing people talk to us about what the scientists are saying, but actually really seeing the data.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
So they go on. I've watched the entire thing. I recommend that you do it. Excuse me, that you do as well. I don't think that this individual has much to contribute, but he just talks about fashion. This individual right here is the one that's really, she's working with data, as she said at the beginning. She's working with open software data and with governments and implementation of, so again, she thinks that she is doing right. I firmly believe that she thinks that. I don't think that she thinks she's an evil genius or anything like that. You know, and I don't think she's an evil person, obviously. But she has been taught something that isn't true and is implementing policies based on that kernel of misinformation. I hate the word misinformation now because it's used all the time in the wrong way, but I'm going to go over here. The second Nobel Prize winner signs letter with 1,600 at the time, September 1st, but now it's 1,750 scientists declaring that there's not an emergency. Climate science should be less political. Last year, I already read that, so I'm going to skip it. Last year, the International Energy Agency, IEA, debuted a roadmap to net zero emissions that became the model for corporate bishops of environmental, social, and governance standards. I agree with that terminology because I do look at this as kind of a religion. It's the new religion of science and climate change, and the bishops of this movement makes sense to me because they are the ones that are pushing this thing that you can't verify. It's not based in fact or reality whatsoever, that we're destroying the climate. The aim of global policy should be prosperity for all. Oh, sorry, I missed that. Good morning, Daffodil. The climate propaganda began at least 55 years ago. It's so sad we as a society have been slowly gaslighted for so long. Yes. And that's part of it. We as humanity have kind of been asleep at the wheel and allowing these self-anointed individuals to create this plan and then brainwash our youth to implement it. And now we're here. We're at the implementation process. We're at the decade of action. United Nations from 2020 to 2030, it's a decade of action. So they've already educated the youth. Now they're going to put the youth to work. And we are seeing that through Biden's initiative and through Whitmer's initiative. And you're going to see more and more of this. It is very dangerous what's going on. You might think that it's all for the good. They make it sound like it's all for the good. But if you actually look at what's happening when the implementation of this plan goes through, it's Goshen, for example, where NDAs are signed in secret. The people that actually live in the area have no vote, have no say, and it's pushed upon us through economic development corporations that have been trained for sustainable development. So it's all this huge cycle this doom vortex, if you will, where now we're reaping what we have sown, which is, we've allowed this to go on. And I'm just as guilty. Again, since 2012, I have been looking into these big plans, but I never thought to look at how they're implementing them locally until this year. And it's so crazy to me that they are in Green Charter Township, that they're in Newaygo County, that they're in any county here in Michigan. Almost all of them have had economic development corporations that they've hired to help them with their development. And they didn't know that they were actually hiring the wolf. But now light is being shed. More and more people are not only interested, but they're searching for this information. And all I can do is thank God every day that I'm one of those people that is actually looking at how it's being implemented so that I could maybe do something about it, right? So, because I can't do anything about the World Economic Forum. I'll never get to Davos, right? But I can do something about right here in these townships, in this county. I can make sure that those people that are going up for election understand what this master plan is and how it's being implemented so that they can make counter moves. That's another reason why I'm doing this is you have to know in any chess-like situation where you have two opposing forces that are going up against each other. You have to know what the other side is doing, what their plan is, how they're moving the pieces, so that you can create a counter to those movements. And so you have to know why they're doing all this. And it's about private property. I always go back to that because that's the root of the root. They want to put a digital ID on everything, a digital twin. They want to put an RFID chip on every single thing. Right now, I just found this out. I have to share. There are trees being planted, and every single one of them has a number and on this map on an iPad. And so every single tree is accounted for, right? And that is part of Agenda 21, is that all things are categorized, and it's the ultimate order. It is too much order. And if you get too much order, it's just as bad as too much chaos. And they're going to bring ultimate order out of ultimate chaos. That is their plan. The aim of global policy should be prosperity for all, by providing reliable and affordable energy at all times, the World Climate Declaration said. There is no climate emergency. Okay, Norwegian-American engineer Ivan Guyver, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1973, is also a signatory to the declaration. The popular narrative about climate change reflects a dangerous corruption of science that threatens the world's economy and the well-being of billions of people. Misguided climate science has metastasized into massive, shock journalistic pseudoscience, Clauser said. In turn, the pseudoscience has become a scapegoat for a wide variety of other unrelated ills. It has been promoted and extended by similarly misguised business marketing agents, politicians, journalists, government agencies, and environmentalists. Mega disasters are actually on the decline, while the destruction from natural events such as hurricanes and wildfires is on the rise. The increase in billion-dollar disasters, excuse me, however, is a result of there being more to destroy. But that hasn't stopped legacy outlets from blaming every natural event on the climate crisis. 2 years ago, the New York Times published postcards from a world on fire, despite natural disaster deaths declining by 90%. The World Climate Declaration also notes that carbon dioxide, plant food, is not a pollutant. It is essential to all life on Earth. So there is another clear indication that there is more to it than just the science says. The science says that, climate change is man-made and that we all need to drastically change our consumption habits in order to appease and save the world. All a lie. Again, I am totally for cleaning stuff up. I don't like that there's an ocean of plastic in the middle of the ocean. There's an island of plastic, rather, in the middle of the ocean. Let's clean that up. I am not for making energy pretty much impossible to afford. Because then what happens is the government gets involved. Like they're talking about government grocery stores in Canada. And if you, again, look at history and at Russia and the Soviet-style grocery stores, they never had any food because government can't run anything efficiently. They don't have any reason to do so. It's an awful, awful thing to have such a big government, and very dangerous. Universities, like the cities that hold them, are communities in their own right. Now, this is support local communities leading on climate, universities leading on climate here in Michigan. This is the Michigan Climate Action Network. And I just wanted to show how our universities here in Michigan are helping contribute to the education of our youth in this climate agenda. Our new reports show Michigan's 15 public universities have taken steps to address climate change and build a culture of sustainability. Representing a considerable part of Michigan's economy and society, higher education institutions can help solve the novel scientific, technological, political, and social challenges climate change will create in their students' lifetimes. One of the most important things that they can do at this point in history is to educate people about climate change and to use their intellectual resources to devise and implement effective climate action plans to model a more sustainable world. Now, the 15 that has been, there's a full report. But, I mean, we do know for a fact Michigan State University and the University of Michigan are both those part of that 15 universities. I wish I did have a list here, but I don't see one. Coming over here, Michigan communities leading on climate. Our new report shows at least 17 Michigan communities have set ambitious climate goals to reach carbon neutrality or 100% renewable energy before 2050. You come down here, you see City of Ann Arbor by 2030. And this, I'll have this link below. Check it out. If you're part of any of these communities, and I'm sure that if you are in Indiana, any state in the United States, you have a climate action plan already, or your governor is getting one together. But 2020 kind of started the process for all these plans, like to be out in the open. And so I'm sure that if you look, you will see that there are plans like this. But Ypsilanti, Shelby Township, Rockford carbon neutral by 2050. And there is the proclamation right here from the city council. So very cool that this is all set up for us to see. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Municipal 100% and carbon neutral goals. The City of Detroit, City of Grand Rapids, 100% renewable energy by 2025 for city operations. So every government building by 2025 will have solar panel or wind turbine energy, according to the strategic plan of the City of Grand Rapids. Lansing, East Lansing has their own. City of Jackson, so you can see there are plans out there, and you need to know what they are. Without comprehensive state climate policies, local communities have had to take it upon themselves to invest in climate solutions in a piecemeal way. Well, they don't like that because we're not doing it fast enough. This report underscores the need for our state to have a strong, comprehensive Michigan Healthy Climate Plan to serve as a roadmap for the state's climate approach. The state is finalizing its plan. It already has. It's out. And then, this is the same. Now, we come here. Michigan Clean Energy Bill has been through 8 drafts, but none are public. Bill has submitted in April, headed toward 9th revision, but original bill is all the public can see. This just came out on the 21st, a couple days ago. And why is it that this bill, we can't see it, except for their initial, original iteration? Where's the transparency? Senate Bill 271, as it exists in Lansing, creates 100% clean energy mandate in Michigan by 2040. Lawmakers and lobbyists have seen revised versions of the bill. There have been 8 such revisions since it was submitted in April. Another bill, Senate Bill 273, has gone through 5 drafts. Singh updated his colleagues on the 2 Senate bills at the start of the 3-hour meeting. His remarks shed light on the bill revision process the public is not privy to. Senate Bill 271, as it exists to the outside world, is the bill State Senator Geis of Taylor submitted in April. Taylor, It requires 100% clean energy transition by 2035. Now, real quick, Taylor, I think there's something here I need to share with you about Taylor. I'm pretty sure. Come down here. And this is Pentagon gives mine developer $20 million to find nickel in Michigan. Another one that just dropped, another article. The federal government has awarded $20 million to mine developer, which is exploring for nickel deposits in Michigan and Minnesota. On Tuesday, September 12th, the Department of Defense awarded a grant to Talon Metals, which is accelerating its hunt for nickel along a geographically unique region. The mineral is critical in aerospace and electric vehicle battery manufacturing. So we are now going to mine territory that hasn't been mined, thus disturbing the biodiversity there, in order to get electric vehicle battery components or minerals for these batteries. Last year, Talon acquired rights to explore for nickel on 400,000 private acres in the UP. The company is seeking a lease from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources to drill more than 23,000 public acres in Baraga, Houghton, Iron, and Marquette counties. The DNR is holding a virtual meeting on Talon's proposed lease on October 11th at 10 a.m. With this funding, Talon will be able to accelerate our efforts to discover domestic sources of battery-grade nickel and help ensure that the United States is not dependent on Russia, China, or Chinese companies operating in countries like Indonesia for nickel that is needed in both defense platforms and clean energy systems. I wonder what it means by defense platforms and aerospace. Is that your direct energy weapons? Is nickel needed in direct energy weapons? The grant is authorized under the Public Defense Production Act and paid by a supplemental funding bill passed by Congress to supply aid to Ukraine. The company's efforts come as skyrocketing demand for vehicles that run on electricity is driving major investments in a domestic supply chain for batteries and putting EV manufacturers in direct business with mining companies like Talon to source critical minerals. The company's efforts come as a skyrocketing demand for EV vehicles? Do you think there's skyrocketing demand, or are we just being told that and we are actually being pushed into it? What do you think? You think it's organic? Talon is facing opposition from tribal and environmental groups which argue the mine would endanger local waters. Such concerns have successfully derailed 2 other proposed nickel and copper mine projects in Minnesota this year. This summer, a key permit for a former polymet project named New Range, about 80 miles northeast of Tamarack, was overturned. In January, the Biden administration quashed plans for a copper and nickel mine near Ely and imposed a 20-year ban on mining and waste in the watershed due to its proximity to federal boundary waters canoe area wilderness. So I guess it's Talon, it's not Taylor. I thought for some reason that was connected, but my mind just tricked me. I'm sorry about that. I will go back to the other article now. And maybe it was, I have 2 more articles that specifically deal with Michigan and the green energy, but we're going to continue. It requires 100% clean energy, this Senate Bill 271, transition by 2035. As the legislature web notes, introduced bills appear as they were introduced and reflect no subsequent amendments or changes. The old version of the bill, yeah, okay. Geis and Singh testified before the Senate Energy Committee last week. That's when Geis said the timetable for the energy transition had been moved back to 2040. So it was 2035, now it's 2040. Since then, meetings have been held on the bill, feedback has been offered, and revisions have been made, Singh told the committee Wednesday, but the revised bill was not ready for committee consideration. We're still taking feedback. Well, I want to know. I want to know what's going back and forth. What concerns our congressmen and women? You know, what changes their mind about the bill, or what are they trying to accomplish or to try to stop? Like, I would like to know. And I'm sure you would too. It's why is the secret? Wind and solar count as renewable, but not nuclear, not until 2035. as far as the public knows. Now that confuses me. Why is nuclear at 2035 renewable but not now? Is it because they're trying to completely screw us out of energy and destroy the like, is this a depopulation initiative? Like, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Is it? Because it makes no sense to me why nuclear is gonna be okay in 2035 but not now. Unless you want energy again to be as expensive or out of reach as possible for the majority of people and thus cause mass devastation in the population of the world. Because that's what's going to happen. I mean, it drives me crazy that people don't see when you have the nitrogen fertilizer has gone down, I think 70%. Like, how do you think that the world is going to eat? Do you think that only Africa and the Middle East are going to be affected by a 70% decline? And then not to mention all the droughts and everything else that's happening, geoengineering. Can anybody say geoengineering? What's happening is so big, and we all need to know. We need to keep talking to our neighbors about this because we can't do anything without strength in numbers. And again, your community can do something together when you have the numbers. I firmly believe that. A county can put in ordinances to stop some of these things, you know? We can do specific things to at least try to mitigate the disaster that's going to happen. The Titanic, I always compare it to the Titanic, what's going on right now, because America's, we're the rich people, okay? We're the rich people at the top of the Titanic. The water doesn't reach us first. The water reaches Africa and the Middle East first. They're at the bottom of the Titanic, and they are being affected right now. I don't know how long it will take for the people on top of the Titanic to feel the water, the ice cold water, but it's coming. Get backyard chickens if you can. Get a garden going. Try to figure out how you can feed your family, because I'm telling you, these next few years are going to be crazy. Residents share thoughts on transparency issues with Eagle's proposed Megasite. The proposed 1,000 plus acre Eagle Megasite is still taking its toll on the community. This just came out. This is Fox News, a local Fox News, but yeah. It has some information. September 18th, so just a few days ago. An issue that deals directly with the local governments that residents say is concerning. There is a complete lack of transparency from the majority of the township board, said Eagle Township resident Chelsea Hops. This transparency issue comes from specific board members signing non-disclosure agreements from LEAP, Lansing Economic Area Partnership, on specific project information, which ended with recalls for board members and calls for a new supervisor, which Troy Stroud says he is proudly stepping up against current supervisor Patty Schaefer. I mean, this is happening in township after township after township here in Michigan. People are realizing that the local township boards are doing stuff in secret when they're supposed to be working for the township. And you know these people. That's why it works. You know your local township board 9 times out of 10. You should. If you don't, go see who they are, meet them, and see who is supposed to be representing you. Because these people, again, they're signing NDAs, and they're supposed to be telling you what's going on and helping you and your community, not central government push their freaking agenda. We collected over 600 signatures for Patty Schaefer's recall, said Stroud. We actually ran into 2 or 3 people that were actually for the Megasite out of over 600. This is a very, very thin support for anything to do with this. But time and again, you'll see the establishment figures like Thelen, like Chapman, like, anybody in the Appropriations Committee. These people are constantly saying that it's the people that are against the project that are small minority of very loud individuals, when really it's the pro-establishment people that actually want these huge EV battery sites or semiconductor plants in their area. So they flip it on their head. They flip everything on its head. It's like we live in the upside down from Stranger Things. Your government shouldn't be hiding this from you. It should be transparent. It should be a fundamental basic right that your government tells you what it's doing with your taxpayer dollars, said Stroud. It's from tree line to tree line. It actually goes all the way to National Guard base to the south, this Megasite. It's road to road from here to there. I mean, there is a map I can share with you that shows how big this is. It's not just the MSU land. They've convinced a bunch of the neighbors to sell, and the NDAs, so they can't talk about it. So you won't get any of those that will want to talk to you on camera because they've already been silenced. Great article, even though it is Fox News. That's exactly what's happening. Good luck to Stroud. I hope that you get in there and actually work for the people. St. Clair County may adopt resolution against state control in local solar projects. Now, this is a huge initiative that every township needs to know about. You need to contact your township and let them know you want an ordinance in place so that the government can't bypass the local township and just put in wind turbines and solar panels without your consent. They will try to do it if we do not try to stop them. And they might still do it even if we do try to stop them. In which case, again, I don't know. I ask all the time intelligent design to help me find balance between peace and nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience, but then consequences for these individuals' actions when they won't listen to us. If we say stop and they won't stop, what do? Because I'm for peace, but I'm also not for sitting there and getting beat up. If someone's beating me up and I just say stop, 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 I'm sorry, I'm going to defend myself. I ask, what do we do? And I'm not asking, you, although I am asking you, but I'm also asking intelligent design, how do we do this? Because again, I'm not for violence. But if they won't say no and stop beating, or if they won't listen to us saying no when they're beating us up, what do we do? I don't know. Baraga. Thank you. Thank you, Michigan Daffodil. But yeah, I pray for everybody. I think positive thoughts, if that's what you prefer. I'm trying to do the right thing. I want to do the right thing. But I also know that letting innocent people suffer by doing nothing is not the right thing. The subject of large-scale industrial wind and solar development has already been a source of ire in some areas of the thumb within the last couple of years, particularly where residents advocate for keeping their communities rural and question the long-term impact of those projects, which is exactly why she wants to bypass it. The last couple of years, people have been rising up saying, no, no, no. No, no, no. We don't like your plans. We don't want them here. And she's saying, I don't care. If you look up in the thumb, even in our area, Wales Township, they don't want it. I think we have another project out somewhere in the Greenwood area, he said. Locals are fighting, so it's going to be a heavy lift. I think for the state to obtain these goals with local control in place, it's just, and I'm not saying it is, right, wrong, or different, the sentiment is not always well received. Originally from the Michigan Association of Counties and sent out to the board by County Administrator Carrie Hepting, Commissioner Dave Rushing said he jumped on it and asked it to be added to Thursday's agenda for a vote. He, as well as other officials, have drawn issue with what a state-level shift in oversight on renewable energy would mean for local zoning control, particularly in areas of St. Clair County, where township officials are still in the process of evaluating those rules for themselves. Taking any regulating authority away from local communities, Rushing said, he feared would be against the state constitution. Well, it should be. It should be against the state constitution for the central state government to take away power from the local decentralized government. I mean, that's why we have these checks and balances in place, right? Just because Lansing passes legislation in the future that says they potentially are going to turn zoning over to the state, I believe that'll make it to the Supreme Court. I think that's a violation, he said. All they really leave local governments to do is become a tax collector. Of course, this is directed at green energy or solar energy, but once you take one zoning issue away, you can take them all away, right? A slippery slope. That's what this is. If we allow her and her government to take our right away in the township for zoning control, we will lose control of the township period. That is how big this is. That is how important it is for you to go to your next township meeting and talk to them about putting some kind of ordinance in place to stop the state government from doing this. Wales Supervisor Liz Masters was at the meeting Monday in Riley, adding it's part of the learning stage for neighboring townships because of what they're going through and what we'll go through. Again, IDRA, Economic Development Responsibility Alliance, every day gets more and more townships, groups of people from different pockets of Michigan that are fighting big government plans. And so those plans, once again, United Nations plans. And so you are ultimately fighting United Nations plans, which we need to do, because if you care about having the right to vote and private property and American values, there is no room for that in the global New World Order. There is no room for private property in globalization. There's no need for your vote, pleb, in the New World Order. You will just do what these intelligentsia say because they know better. The scientists, the data from these scientists, everybody needs to know them and implement it. Whether they adopt one down the road or not, she said she drew more concern with the idea of a few members of the MPSC making decisions that affected hundreds of townships statewide. County Board of Commissioners, that was last week. So keep an eye out on this. And we need to keep an eye out as well on the Senate bills and University of Michigan awarded $5 million to establish Climate Change Research Center. So $5 million taxpayer dollars to go towards a lie. And that's another thing is like, if the initial institution or the initial idea to create an institution is a lie, every job and every institution after that is based off of a lie. It's like, yeah, it's creating this narrative that doesn't even exist in the real world and then making a bunch of jobs out of it. I don't know how to explain it correctly and to how to say how crazy it is to create all of these different things based out of nothing. It's like something from nothing, right? It's like the Big Bang, something from nothing. Biden acknowledges the old world order needs a refresh. This came out September 19th. And it talks about President Joe Biden's address to the United Nations Tuesday that urged the world to stand by Ukraine, which is, another thing. If you've been here long enough, you know I'm anti-war. War is a racket. It only helps further the bankster and New World Order agendas. At times, it felt like he was also imploring the countries to stick with the United Nations. If we abandon the core principles of the UN Charter to appease an aggressor, can any member state in this body feel confident that they are protected? Now, it is funny because Russia is one of the 5 powers of the United Nations. Multiple top world leaders skipped the meeting this year, including President Vladimir Putin of Russia, which is a villain for invading Ukraine, but also a permanent member of the UN Security Council with veto power over any resolutions it opposes. And they are absolutely doing the United Nations Agenda 21 in Russia. I have a Substack that from a Russian. I read a Russian Substack that talks about implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. So he is playing the bad guy right now, but he is absolutely a part of the New World Order leaders. He is another wolf that is vying for control to be top dog in the Dark Shepherd's plans, but they are absolutely doing their role in this grand narrative. I'm not for Russia. Rather, I'm for the people of Russia because I'm for the people of the world. But the Russian government, just like all the governments around the world, is really the problem. It's really a problem of us, the people of every single nation, against these out of control governments that we've set up. Like this, we have created the Hydra or the enemy. Like it's the Frankenstein. We are Dr. Frankenstein. We've created the monster, and it's called governments around the world. And Russia is no different. That's what I'm trying to get at. Of the 5 permanent Security Council members, United States, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom, they're all vying for top spot. They're all working together. Russia's acting like the bad guy so that our money is funneled out of America into Ukraine. Who knows where that money is going? It's completely unaccountable. Millions have already gone missing. Billions have been sent. It's out of control. Biden is the only leader to attend. Okay. CNN's senior UN correspondent Richard Roth noted this may not be unprecedented, but also could weaken the impact of the event this year. Now, this is out of CNN, by the way. Again, I know CNN is biased. You know it's biased, just like Fox News is biased. They're all the mainstream media is all establishment media. But that does not mean you can't find truth in the muck. And that's why we rake it up. The bedrock needs updating. While Biden called international institutions created at the end of World War II, the UN, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and others, an enduring bedrock of our progress, he also acknowledges the need to reorient them toward a changing world. Yeah, the UN, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization came out of World War II. Wow. Come down here and it says forum shopping. This is why there weren't a lot of leaders besides Biden at the United Nations, because they get together all the time. These central planners. I won't call them globalists. Some people think that sounds Alex Jonesy, put my tinfoil hat globalists, even though they tout being globalists like they want. Anyway, we'll say central planners, okay? The central planners meet up, schmooze, go on their private jets, pay off the carbon footprint with some tax carbon offset credits or whatever. It's a racket, baby. It's a racket, and if you're rich, you can afford it. Asked on CNN how the absence of key world leaders hangs over the conference, CNN's senior White House correspondent, Kayla whoever, explained in dizzying detail just how many opportunities these world leaders have to meet up. Her words are in italics below. Many of those world leaders were just in India together for the G20 earlier this month, although Xi Jinping skipped that one too. Because isn't it funny? Xi Jinping of China is part of the G20, is part of the World Economic Forum, is part of the United Nations. And then, of course, there was the BRICS Summit of emerging markets nations in South Africa that took place in August. Xi did attend, but the U.S. is not a BRICS member. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, although other countries have been invited to join. Later this fall, you have APEC, which is an Indo-Pacific focused economic summit that is going to be taking place in San Francisco. That's really where administration officials are expecting President Biden and President Xi of China to possibly meet on the sidelines of that visit in a bilateral format. Biden skipped last year's APEC summit, but Xi attended. So there you go. There's still an opportunity for Xi Jinping and Biden to meet and talk in secret. And then you have COP28, which is a climate-focused summit, which is taking place in Dubai. COP stands for Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, so it is a UN-sponsored event. So there are all these various fora for leaders to be meeting. And when you talk to foreign policy experts, they say that some leaders go forum shopping. If they feel like they can't get from the UN or G20 what they're trying to get, then they'll go somewhere else. I mean, what do you think of that? Yeah, I'll tell you this too. I don't know why it just popped in my head. 2019, the military war games. The military war games happened in 2019 in Wuhan, China, where all the countries got together, all the leaders got together of the world, and this was October of 2019. They all got together, and what did they do? They made the grand plan for the Great Reset, more than likely. And I can't prove it, but I don't believe in coincidences, okay? I don't believe in coincidences. And the fact that all of them met in October of 2019 in Wuhan, China, including Trump, they all met. That speaks volumes. They went there, they made a plan, they already had the plan, but rather they said, all right, guys, remember the plan? Ready, break. That's what they did. Ready, break. And then the floodgates opened, and we all know what happened in 2020, don't we? convincing countries the UN has helped them. Most of Biden's address did not actually focus on Ukraine. Instead, he talked about how climate change, inequality, and other cross-border issues require the structure of an inclusive international order. So Biden is saying, yeah, we need the UN. The UN is an organization whose efficacy has been questioned for years, whose influence has waned due to bureaucracy and deadlock, and whose charter was inarguably violated by Russia. But Russia has tried to build support among developing nations. Developing country, yeah, I'm going to go down. Issues cut across borders. While he supported the mission for the UN, he said the organization had lost its way. If you locked a team of evil geniuses in a laboratory, they could not design a bureaucracy so maddeningly complex, requiring so much effort, but in the end incapable of delivering the intended result. This is Anthony Banbury. He's a former UN Assistant Secretary General for Field Support who resigned in 2016 after working for many years in both the UN in New York and in the field. So that was the one that he supports the mission. He said the organization has lost its way. Well, yeah, in 2019, it partnered up with the World Economic Forum, and now they are the evil genius masterminds of the world, implementing their plans locally, thinking about it globally. Biden's new tone on democracy in the U.S. Biden's address to the UN was beamed worldwide, but he gave another notable talk this week that was only some donors in New York saw Monday. At a campaign fundraiser in which he spoke from the stage of the Broadway Theater currently staging the musical Sweeney Todd, Biden seemed to be trying out material for coming presidential campaign. I don't know why they put that in there, but Sweeney Todd is about cannibalism. It's about meat pies with humans inside of them. And I just think it's weird. He spoke from the stage of the Broadway Theater currently staging the musical Sweeney Todd. I don't know. Something to that little detail that bothers me. All right. I have, let's see, this, and I want to make sure I said everything I need to about, oh, yes. All right, I have this, and then I have dates for you that you need to be aware of. I put the dates at the end of the video this time. Let me know if that's okay, or if you really prefer all of the dates to be at the front. But we're going to go in really quick. I have a few things highlighted. 5 things to watch out for the UN General Assembly opening. This came out right before the UN actually met, but I think that there's a few things in here that are kind of telling. So it says, and this is, by the way, out of Carnegie, Endowment for International Peace. I highly recommend you look at their news publications every so often. Very enlightening stuff. Carnegie, it's like a think tank, right? And these think tanks have very good articles from time to time. At this year's UNGA, developing nations will be looking for more than empty platitudes from Western leaders, including often hypocritical expressions of fealty to democratic ideals. And one promising signal, Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, and the UK, and the United States have accepted the final Sustainable Development Goal Summit Declaration, containing surprisingly bold language on reforming the international financial institutions to make them more equitable and responsive to the financing needs of developing countries, and to strengthen the voice of participation of developing countries in international economic decision-making. Again, this is all about cutting down the tall sunflower called America and the UK and Japan and Australia, New Zealand, cutting that tall sunflower down in order to be level with the emerging markets. This international financial institution, IFI, that is the global monetary system that they're building. And in fact, 2015 is when they came up with their original idea. And next year, in 2025, no, that's not next year, the year after, they're going to meet again to what? Put their central bank digital currency in? I mean, I thought it would come sooner than that, but I don't know. Who knows really when the central bank digital currency will come into be? I mean, is it when the banks collapse? I don't know. Still, observers should temper their expectations. Any major strategic and resource decisions regarding global development are likely to await the annual meeting of the World Bank and IMF next month in Morocco. So here we have another, they didn't talk about this one, the World Bank and the IMF are meeting. So that's another where the globalists, or rather central planner elitists, can get together. Although nominally part of the UN system, the IFIs have distinct governance structures that advantage major shareholders, and they command much larger resources than UN agencies. This year, UNGA will also signal whether wealthy donor nations, are willing to open their wallets. Since the SDGs were first agreed, their estimated annual financial cost has surged to $4 trillion, up from the original $2 to $3 trillion. So far, for these master plans, $4.2 trillion is needed. Over the same period, hopes of expanding global development resources from billions to trillions by using public funds to leverage private finance, they have evaporated. So all that money, all our public money that was used to bribe private industry to go along with, let's say, electric cars, all that money's gone. So our taxpayer dollars were used. That's why it's public-private partnership. The public paid in order to entice the private sector to get in. The water's warm. Come on, the water's warm for EV batteries and all this. Look there's so much money here. Come, I'll give you money. And now that money's gone. Imagine that. And what do we have to show for it? Higher energy prices and inflation out the butt. And I mean, at least we can get food, though. I will say that. I can still go to the grocery store and I can get food. And you can't say that. Every nation can't say that. And in a year, we don't know. 2 years, it'll be even more unsure whether that will be a thing. I mean, again, Canada's already talking about doing government-run freaking grocery stores. So there's going to be a food shortage. Guterres has proposed, and let me know if I said that correct. Guterres has proposed an SDG stimulus of $500 billion per year, accompanied by increased concessional lending from multilateral development banks and additional expansion and recycling of the IMF's special drawing rights and more generous debt suspension provisions. $500 billion per year for the SDG stimulus. That's what he wants to do. $500 billion taxpayer dollars? I'm sure Biden will sign us up. Keep a lookout. Determining what proportion of these development resources to allocate to traditional bilateral aid programs versus international funds and initiatives to provide global public goods such as climate financing, pandemic preparedness, and humanitarian relief. Right. How much money should go into the New World Order and how much money should be for America? That's what that's saying. The first on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response is intended to create political momentum and solidarity on this shared agenda. This is another chance to show solidarity on global health. Again, that's not over. The World Health Organization just came up with some stuff to get around our Congress. It's an agreement. It's not a treaty. And so they have immense power, and our government agreed to this immense power over our health based on international standards rather than American standards or German standards or Australian standards. It takes place just as intergovernmental negotiations heat up in Geneva on both a new pandemic treaty and on amendments to international health regulations, which constitute the only legal binding framework that defines countries' rights and obligations for handling cross-border public health emergencies. Negotiations will culminate in the World Health Assembly's meeting in May. So there's something to look out for. In May, they're going to make all new rules for this new world order. The second on universal health coverage is meant to renew attention to the 2019 declaration that set an ambitious target for universal coverage of essential health services and access to essential medicines and vaccines for all people by 2030. No, they say it's for access to essential medicines. No. No. I'm sorry. They don't want you to just have access. They want to demand and force you to get whatever it is they deem is necessary. Again, dangerous times we are living in. We need to understand what the hell they're trying to do to us. All in the name of safety. That's what drives me the most crazy. The second on universal, okay, yeah. Come down here, finally. We will be looking for evidence and statements reaffirming the UN's continued centrality to world order. That's what they expected to see, and that is what they saw. That's what we saw. At a time when governments have many alternative vehicles for collective action. Faced with paralysis at the UN, member states increasingly rely more on mini-lateral frameworks that allow narrower coalitions of the interested, capable, and like-minded to cooperate in pursuit of shared strategic priorities, economic interests, and ideological preferences. Minilateral. And these are little pockets of, like it says, coalitions that go around government, for example, that we might put in place. For Western nations, the G7 and NATO provide indispensable foundations to defend the rules-based international order. Similarly, revisionists and emerging powers see the expanding BRICS group as an important platform to challenge entrenched global inequities, like the dollar's role at the main reserve currency. Even the G20, where heterogeneous. Wow. Please put that in there. How do you say that? I'm sorry. I'm getting close to the end here, so maybe I'll just make that excuse. Yeah. Membership is a microcosm of the world's divisions, provide its members with a more flexible framework for decisions than the UN. Let's see. No other framework enjoys the legitimacy conferred by the UN's legally binding charter and universal membership. Its monopoly on the authorization of armed force and the invaluable work of its specialized agencies and programs in domains spanning humanitarian relief, global health, nuclear inspections, transnational crime, outer space, and more. Outer space. I didn't know that. Ultimately, a resilient and legitimate world order depends on universal institutions grounded in international law with standing technical capabilities. Global governance cannot rest simply on affinity groups and pickup teams. Member states recently negotiated scope of Pact of the Future document that will include chapters on sustainable development and finance, peace and security, digital cooperation, youth and future generations, and transforming global governance. So, again, they just say it outright. This is what they want. They want a new world order. Biden even said it's time for the old world order to go. It's time for a new world order. So, and Bush Sr. said the same thing, and that was in the 70s. And so you're absolutely right that 55 years ago, it all started in the 60s is when this whole new initiative, this new world order push really started in the 60s, which a lot happened in the 60s in terms of the church too. But that is a topic for another day. Lastly, I have the events to share with you. Vernon Township monthly meeting, September 25th. That's tonight, 7 p.m. So if you're in or around Vernon Township, please show up. It is the MEDC's latest Megasite, and it looms in Shiawassee County, Vernon Township. It's going to be solar panels and wind turbines. Very important for you to show up if you can. The Michigan Strategic Fund board meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. I will live stream that, so that will be my video for tomorrow, more than likely. Stop the Marshall Megasite will be September 27th protest at 3:30 to 5:30, and then September 30th is another weekly protest for Marshall. And last October 1st, Eagle Township Supervisor candidate Troy Stroud open house. So that's from 2 to 4:30. If you are in Eagle Township, you should definitely show up, see what's going on with your government and with your land in your area, because things are going down. And then the dam. Consumers Energy is getting out of the hydro dam business, the hydroelectricity business, the hydro business. And they are meeting with people to, I don't know, see how we feel about it. I don't know if we really have a choice, but I think you should show up. And it's September 27th, Wednesday. So this Wednesday, Weber Dam at in Ionia, Michigan. So if you are in and around this dam, I highly recommend you go and see what they're saying about your dam and see what kind of plans they have. Now, last video I did, I think it was the last video I did, the Consumers Energy rep that was at the Hardy Dam, Croton Dam meeting that I went to. He said that there's a lot of opportunity for the river when it goes back to the natural flow. So these dams, unfortunately, are probably going to be demolished, majority of them, but still, we need to try, right? If you want to keep your dam, you need to try. Alcona has a dam Monday, October 2nd. Meeting to go to, the Loud and 5 Channel dams, and October 11th. And then Rogers Dam, I will be going to that meeting, is October 16th. Cook and Foot Dam, October 24th. And then there's, Tippy, Mayo, Hoden Pile. Yes, the dams, very important. And I do want to show you really quick. The IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, which is all about really renewable energy sources, they're currently not eligible for production tax credit. Now, why are they not getting any money? See, the problem is $1.4 billion for Consumers Energy to stay in the hydro business, and they don't have the money. That's for the licensing, relicensing, and all that. But why don't they get money? If hydro is a sustainable source and the Inflation Reduction Act is really about renewable sources, then why is Consumers Energy not getting any of this money? And I'm going to come up, let's see. It shows you here. Here are the different dams. This river right here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dams that could be taken out so that the river goes back to its natural flow. Then you have Hardy, Rogers, and Croton for this Big Muskegon River. Weber down here for the Grand River. That's the next meeting, right? And then Culkin's Bridge for the Kalamazoo River. So you can see here what's going on with these rivers and these dams. And they say that natural gas, is what gives us all our energy right now, and hydroelectric is only 1.1%, which is why they say they're getting out of the business, because there's no money in it. I don't know how there's no money in it if hydro is a renewable source and the IRA is giving money out for renewable sources. Doesn't make sense to me. Make it make sense. Oh, right here, there's a dam meeting at Ferris this week or next. A dam meeting at Ferris. I need to look into that because I haven't heard about it. I know there's one in October, which I guess next week is October. Holy crap. All right, I will look out for that, and hopefully I can shout out the meeting for next week later on before the meeting shows up. So this survey, by the way, it showed that in the Croton area for Croton Dam gives $40 million of property value. It ups the property value by $40 million for the state. So that's taxes and everything else. I just thought that was mind-blowing, that without the dam there, the property value drops $40 million. That is very concerning for anybody who lives around the dam, obviously, because that's your property. That's our property value that's going to go to the wayside if these dams go away. So this is the presentation that we were shown, and I will have this link down below so you can see for yourself. But I will say they never talked about the river going to the original flow. It's not on these slides either. It wasn't until after the meeting and they talked to Fox News where the rep said that the water there's a lot of opportunities for it to go back to its natural flow. So they're not being completely sincere. They will be putting the dams up for sale at the end of this year just to get data, just to see if I'll put myself up here, just to see if the people that want to buy it, what do they want to buy, how much do they want to spend, so that's what they say. Now perhaps they'll get a good deal, but either way, look for the dams to be up for sale the end of this year. I think that's all I have for you. I really appreciate you hanging out. I hope that I connected some dots that's really what I'm trying to do. I always want you to think for yourself. Never outsource your thinking, but it's important to understand why these things are happening. And I have traced it all the way back to those two grand plans. So if you agree with me or disagree with me, put the comment down below. I would like to know your thoughts. I love feedback. I love new ideas. I love new leads. And I am open to new ideas, but I also am not a fence sitter. So once I get enough information, I will make an informed choice. But I'm always open to upgrade my software, upgrade that idea that I have. And I think that you should too, because you don't know what you don't know. So thank you again, guys. Faith over fear, always. Keep spreading the good word. Let your neighbor know what's going on nicely and try to get them to understand why it's important for them to show up to these meetings, hit up your congressman, let them know what you want and what you don't want, and be active in your local community. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Michigan Strategic Fund when they spend our money, and hopefully it's not too terrible tomorrow, but we'll see. Thank you, guys.